The number on my laptop was 11,412, and every time the screen refreshed it went up by about 40. That was payments already gone. Not queued, not pending, gone, out of the door and into the clearing system, and every single one of them was wrong. I was sitting at my kitchen table in a dressing gown at 3:50 in the morning with the cold coming up through the tiles into my bare feet, watching a counter climb, and there was a small stupid part of my brain that kept expecting it to stop on its own the way a dripping tap sometimes does. My phone was face down next to the laptop, and it kept walking sideways across the wood every time it buzzed. Bryony from support had rung 4 times. The group chat had gone from dead to 80 messages in 9 minutes. Somewhere in Doncaster, a care assistant who had worked 41 hours that week was going to wake up in 3 hours and find £11 and 40 pence in her account. And somewhere in Hull, another one was going to find 9,000 of them. And neither of those was better than the other. I typed the command that stops the pay run mid-flight, the emergency one, the one you were supposed to be able to use exactly for this. It came back in under a second and told me there was no pay run in progress. Of course there wasn't. It had finished. It had finished beautifully, at speed, without a single error, 40 minutes earlier, and it was still finishing, because the bank does not care that you have changed your mind. I work on the payroll system that staffing agencies use to pay the people who work in care homes. Not the homes themselves, the agencies in the middle, about 210 of them, who take a phone call at 9 at night saying we are 2 carers short on the dementia wing and put 2 carers on the dementia wing by 10. Those carers get paid weekly, on a Friday, and a lot of them are paid weekly because weekly is what stands between them and their gas meter. That is the whole business. We are not curing anything. We move money on a Friday, and if we move it late or wrong, real people go without. My bit of it was the front door. Every agency sends us their timesheets in a different shape because every agency bought a different scheduling tool in a different decade, and my job for 4 years had been the machine that swallows all of that and turns it into one clean list of hours. I own the imports. When something came in with the dates written backwards or a column that said rate, but held somebody's staff number, it landed on me. That is not glamorous work, but it is honest work, and I was good at it. And I could tell you from memory which agencies would send us a broken file on a bank holiday week, because they always did. My partner Elin and I had signed a lease in January on a unit behind the laundrette on Cross Street. And the bike workshop we had been talking about for 6 years was opening on the last Saturday in June. Whether or not I still had a job. That is the whole of my personal situation, and I am not going to keep coming back to it. The person who ran our delivery was called Dominic. In my own head, never out loud, I called him the weather vane, because whatever the most senior person in the room had said in the last 10 minutes was what Dominic believed with his whole chest. He had this habit when he was under pressure of smoothing one eyebrow flat with his thumb, over and over, like he was trying to press an idea back into his skull. His phrase was, cards on the table, and he used it before saying things that were not on any table at all. And I will say this for him, because it is true and it makes the rest of it worse. When Bryony's mother went into hospital in Wakefield, Dominic drove her there on a Sunday and sat in the car park for 6 hours, and he knew the names of everybody's kids, and he actually asked about them. In the first week of March, we got the delivery from the Contractors. We had brought in an outfit from Manchester called Calderhall to rewrite the timesheet import, the exact thing I owned, because a board somewhere had decided it was too slow and too much of it lived in one person's head. Their lead was a bloke named Stefan who had very good slides. The work landed on a Tuesday morning, and I sat down with it expecting to spend a day and ended up staring at my screen for about 90 minutes with a feeling in my stomach like when you put your foot on a stair that isn't there. It referred to things that did not exist. Not typos, not old names, things that had never existed in our system in any version, ever. There was a whole section that called out to a piece of our own software by a name I had never seen, confidently, over and over, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. There were long, polite comments explaining what each part did, and the explanations described behavior the thing underneath them did not have. There were tests, dozens of them, and every one of them checked that a number was a number and then declared victory. It was fluent. That was the horrible part. It read better than anything I have ever written. It read like a very clever person who had never once seen our system describing our system to somebody who would never check. I took it into the Thursday meeting. There were 7 of us in the small room on the second floor, the one with the radiator that ticks, and I put my laptop on the table and turned it so Dominic and Aisling could see, and I said, out loud, nobody wrote this. This came out of an AI, and nobody at their end read it afterwards. Dominic did the eyebrow. Cards on the table. Callum, that's a big accusation. It's not an accusation, it's a description, I said. This part here calls a piece of our software that doesn't exist. This part says it checks for duplicate shifts, and then it doesn't check for duplicate shifts, it just counts them and throws the number away. And this whole file of tests, all of it, does nothing. It passes if you delete the thing it's testing. I ran it. I deleted the thing it's testing, and it passed. Aisling, who tests, and who has a face like a closed door when she is working, leaned over and read for about 40 seconds, and then sat back and said, he's right, and there's worse. There's nothing in here that stops the same shift being paid twice. So we send it back, said Dominic, and they fix it, and we're 4 weeks late, and I have to go and explain to the board why the thing they've already paid for isn't a thing. He was smoothing that eyebrow flat. Or we take it, we watch it, and we deal with what comes up. It's an import. It's not the pay engine. Worst case is a file doesn't load, and Callum loads it by hand like he already does. And then I said the thing that mattered, the thing I have gone over in my head every night since, and I said it in front of 6 people. There's a bigger problem, and it's not their code. Calder Hall have been doing their practice runs against the real database. The one with every carer's hours and bank details in it. It's not a copy. It's the actual live one. Somebody wired it up that way so they could get realistic results, and nobody's unwired it. They think they're playing in a sandbox, and they are standing in the middle of the road. The radiator ticked. Annika, who had started 3 weeks earlier and did not yet know which silences meant what, looked around the table waiting for somebody to be alarmed. Is that a today problem or a someday problem? Dominic asked. It's a today problem that hasn't happened yet. Then it's a someday problem, he said. And he actually laughed, and 2 people laughed with him because he was the one running the meeting, and that is what happens. Look, Callum, I hear you. I do. But I need you to hear how this sounds from where I'm sat. You built the old import. They've been paid to replace it. Every objection you raise sounds like exactly what a man defending his own work would say. I want to be clear that this was said kindly. That was Dominic all over. He put the knife in with a warm hand on your shoulder, and he genuinely did not think of it as a knife. The group chat afterwards was the usual mess. Bryony sent a single full stop. Aisling messaged me directly and said, put the sandbox thing somewhere written down, because in 8 weeks nobody in that room will remember you said it. I said the room heard it. She said the room hears everything. The thing is, Dominic had already told us how he wanted this. 2 months before, he had got sick of people ambushing him in meetings and had announced that if you had a concern you were to message him directly, one-to-one, because, cards on the table, he read everything and he answered everything. So on the 11th of March, from my desk, in the middle of a completely ordinary afternoon in which I also chased a broken file from an agency in Leicester and ate a cheese sandwich, I opened our chat and typed it out properly. That the practice system used by the contractors was pointed at the real customer data, that anything they ran against real carers' hours, that we needed it pointed at a copy before anything of theirs went near a pay run. He replied about 90 seconds later. He said, noted, appreciate the diligence. Let's not slow the train down. I sent a thumbs up because what else do you send? Then I went back to the Leicester file, which had a column of dates in American order, which I fixed, which took 40 minutes, which is my life. The gap was 7 weeks, and I will not pretend they were dramatic. Their import went live at the end of March with Dominic's approval on it and nobody else's, because in our process a delivery manager can approve a contractor change, and no engineer at our end was ever asked to read the thing before it went out. That is not a rule anybody wrote down. It is just what happened. Declan went in the same round. Declan had built the pay engine, the part that actually turns hours into money, 11 years earlier, and had spent every year since being the only person who really understood the recovery procedure, the thing you run when a pay run goes out wrong and you need to pull it back. He was told on a Tuesday and gone on the Friday, and there was a card and a cake and about 9 minutes of eye contact in a corridor. He said to me at the lift, "You'll be all right. You're on the boring end." And I said something back that I do not remember. In the last week of April, somebody at Calder Hall complained that the confirmation prompt was slowing them down. Before you can start a pay run, the system asks you a question, in plain words, Are you sure? This will send real money to real people. Type the name of the agency to continue. Stefan said it was friction. Dominic agreed it was friction. It was switched off on the 29th of April by a change that took one person 11 minutes and was reviewed by nobody. And I only found out because I went looking for it in June. So by the second week of May, we had contractor work nobody had read running against real customer data with the last question removed, and the only man who knew how to undo a bad pay run sat at home in Halifax. Nothing happened for 11 days. Aisling rang me first, at 18 minutes past 3, and she never rings anybody. I had my phone in my hand before the second buzz, because that is what 4 years of on-call does to you. And her voice had the flatness people get when they have already been awake for a while and have already been frightened for a while. She said the Thursday night pay run for a group of agencies in Yorkshire had gone out with hours that did not match any timesheet anybody had sent us. Not late. Not stuck. Out. The first 4 minutes were me on the kitchen tiles with the laptop lid still half down while it woke up. I looked at the run history, which is just a list of what the system has done and when, and there it was. One job started at 10 past 2 in the morning, run under an account belonging to Calder Hall, described in its own record as a practice run. It had read the real-time sheet table, decided that a large number of shifts had never been imported them again on top of themselves, doubled some, halved others where two records collided, and then, because their work had no idea it was not supposed to, handed the whole lot to the pay engine and asked it politely to pay everybody. And the pay engine, which is the most well-behaved thing in our entire company, paid everybody. No prompt. Nobody to ask. It had been told to send money, and it sent money. I got Bryony on the phone at 4. She was already in the office, which meant she had driven in from Ossett in the dark, and behind her I could hear the support phones doing that overlapping trill they do when more than 3 lines are lit. I've got an agency in Barnsley on hold, she said. Their director is crying. Not shouting. Crying. 206 of her carers have been paid something, and she doesn't know what, and neither do I. And she's got a woman on the other line who's been paid £4. The office filled the way those rooms always fill, one person at a time, everybody arriving with a coat still on. Annika got in at 10 to 5 and stood in the doorway holding a laptop bag and said, "What do you want me to do?" And nobody answered him for about a minute and a half, which I still feel bad about. Aisling had 2 screens up and was counting. Dominic arrived last, at 20 past 5, and he was gray in a way I had not seen on a person outside a hospital, and he did not say cards on the table, and he did not smooth his eyebrow. He just stood behind Aisling's chair with his arms hanging. We tried 4 things, and each one failed differently. The first was the recovery procedure, the one Declan built, the thing that is supposed to pull back a bad run and put the numbers back where they were. I ran it at 20 to 5. It asked for a run identifier. I gave it one, and it sat there for 6 minutes and came back saying it could not find a matching snapshot. It turned out that the snapshot it wanted had been written by a part of the old import that the contractors had replaced in March. Their version did not write one. So the recovery procedure had been quietly useless since the 27th of March, and nobody had noticed because nobody had needed it. That is the sort of thing that only announces itself on the one morning you cannot afford it. The second was the bank. Bryony got a human being on the phone at 20 past 6, an actual named person at the payments desk, and the answer was the answer I already knew and had been hoping to be wrong about. The file was in the clearing cycle. We are not the originator. The agencies are. Each of the 14 affected agencies would have to contact their own bank and request a recall, individually, per payment, and it was 6 in the morning on a Friday before a bank holiday, and half of those agencies were one woman with a mobile phone and a laptop on a kitchen table, just like mine. The third was the backup, and the third one is the one that made me put my head down on the desk. We take a copy of the database every night at 3. The run had started at 10 past 2. So our most recent copy of the truth was a copy of the damage, taken with a straight face, 45 minutes after everything went wrong, and the one before that was from Wednesday night, which was missing an entire day of timesheets that people had actually worked. Restoring it would have unpaid the small number of people who had accidentally been paid correctly and erased a day of real hours from the record. Aisling said, "So the choice is wrong or wrong and also lost," and nobody argued with her. The fourth was Declan. It was Dominic who said his name, at about 6:30, in a small voice, and there was this pause in the room where everybody looked at everybody else. I said I would do it because I was the one who still had his number. He picked up on the fifth ring, and he sounded like a man who had been asleep and had recognized the number and had decided to answer anyway out of some old reflex. I said his name and told him what had happened and asked if he would talk me through what the recovery procedure was actually meant to do, because it was not finding its snapshot. There was a long quiet on the line. Then he said, "They walked me out through the goods entrance with a cardboard box, mate. In March. On a Tuesday. Not angry. That was what did it. Completely level, like reading a shipping forecast. I hope you get it sorted." And he hung up, and he was right too, and I stood in the middle of that office with my phone against my ear listening to nothing. It was Aisling who said it out loud to the room, at about 7, when a woman from our legal side had come down and was asking, reasonably, how a practice run could have paid actual money to actual people. Aisling turned round in her chair and said, "Because the practice system isn't a practice system. It's been pointed at the real customer data since the winter. Everything the contractors have done for 4 months, they've done to live records. They thought they were rehearsing. They were performing." And the lawyer said, "Who decided that?" And the room went so quiet you could hear the support phones through the wall. By 8 in the morning, we had a number. 9,740 carers paid the wrong amount across 14 agencies. 2,100 of those paid less than £5. 61 paid more than 10,000. One man in Rotherham paid, through a collision of 2 records, £43,000, which he rang his agency about immediately and honestly, which I think about sometimes when I am in a bad mood about people in general. We spent Friday and the whole of Saturday rebuilding the correct hours by hand from the original files the agencies had sent us, which we still had, because I had built the thing that keeps them, and it had never occurred to me to stop keeping them. 6 of us, at desks, with a spreadsheet each, and Bryony bringing down sandwiches nobody ate. Annika worked 19 hours and did not complain once and got a whole agency's worth of Sheffield timesheets rebuilt on his own. On Sunday afternoon, we pushed a corrected run out for Monday morning. And it was Monday morning for the people who had been paid £4 on a Friday before a bank holiday. And there is no version of this where that is fine. The meeting was the Monday after, at 10, in the big room on the 4th floor. Annika came down, who is our chief technology officer and who I had spoken to maybe 6 times in 4 years, and she is not a shouter, which is worse. Stefan from Calderhall was there in person, in a suit, having driven over from Manchester, and he had the good sense to look like a man at a funeral. Dominic, me, Aisling, Bryony, the lawyer. Annika said, "Walk me through it." Dominic went first, because he always went first. He was very good for about 4 minutes. He talked about a contractor delivery that had not met the standard we expect. He talked about a regrettable configuration issue in the test environment, which is a way of saying that the practice system had been wired to the real customer database that manages to make it sound like weather. He said, and this is close to word for word, cards on the table, "If anyone had told me that the contractors' practice runs were touching live records, we'd have stopped everything that day." Nobody raised it. Not once. Stefan said something about assurances he had been given regarding the environment. Annika let him finish and then asked him, quite gently, whether any human being at his company had read the March delivery before it was sent, and Stefan looked at the table for a while and said that the work had been assisted and that the review process had not been what it should have been. Aisling made a noise through her nose. Annika turned back to Dominic. "You approved that change on your own signature. On the understanding it was low risk," he said. "It's an import. And look, in fairness, the environment thing is the root of this, and that's an IT decision made months before I was anywhere near it. I was managing a deadline with the information I had. Nobody put anything in front of me. There was nothing in place, no warning, no note, nothing. If there had been, we would not be sat here. I had my laptop in front of me and had not opened it once. I opened it then, and I found our chat, and I scrolled up to the 11th of March, and I turned the screen round and slid it across the table to Annika. That's you and me, March the 11th. Scroll to the bottom. Then I shut up. I want to be honest about how long that silence was, because in my memory it is about a year, and in reality, it was maybe 9 seconds. Annika put her glasses on and read it to the room in the flat voice of somebody reading a train time. My message, all of it, the practice system pointed at the real customer data. Anything they run runs against real carers' hours. We need it pointed at a copy before anything of theirs goes near a pay run. And then Dominic's reply, 90 seconds later. Noted. Appreciate the diligence. Let's not slow the train down. She read the reply twice. Not for effect. I think she wanted to be sure of it. Dominic's hand came up towards his eyebrow and stopped about halfway, in the air, and stayed there. Then he said, that's not, I mean, in that context that reads differently to how it. And he could not find the end of that sentence, and he did not find another one. Annika took her glasses off. She said, you told this room that nobody raised it. Callum raised it in writing to you personally, and you told him not to slow the train down. And then 7 weeks later you approved the change that removed the last question before real money leaves the building. She closed my laptop and slid it back to me. Go home, Dominic. Somebody will call you this afternoon. He was out of the building by 11 and he was gone properly by the end of the month. And the letter that went round used the phrase, has decided to pursue opportunities elsewhere, which is a phrase I now cannot read without hearing a radiator tick. Annika found me by the lifts a week later and asked whether I would take on the coordination side, Dominic's old patch, more money, my name on the approvals. I said no. I said I would stay on the imports, and I would put the practice system back on a copy of the data and the confirmation question back where it belonged, and I would do it in 4 days a week from July, because on the last Saturday in June there was a unit behind the laundrette on Cross Street with my name on the lease and 47 refurbished bikes in it. She thought about that for a second, and then she said, do you do panniers?